She forged everything. Get her out of here in cuffs. That's what my father screamed as two officers yanked my wife, still in her wedding dress, off the church steps. Hi, my name is Landon Reed, and that was the moment I stopped being their son. 1 hour earlier, I'd married the love of my life. Elena and I had been through everything: disapproval, whispers, backhanded comments at every family dinner, but she stood by me anyway. She never raised her voice, never played victim. She was grace under fire. And yet, as soon as we stepped outside the church, she was ambushed. Police. A warrant. My father handing them a folder like it was his ticket to justice. She stole from my company, he told them. She forged client signatures. She's been scamming us for months. I was stunned. What are you talking about? She's never even stepped foot in your office. She used your login, Landon. We have digital records. Elena was crying, confused. I don't even know his system, please, I swear. My mother stood frozen. My brother, arms crossed. No one said a word in her defense. Not one. I tried to block the officers. You're making a mistake. This is personal. Move, one said. We have probable cause. Elena locked eyes with me as they cuffed her. Not angry. Not pleading. Just betrayed. I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned to my father, calm and shaking. You planned this. He didn't deny it. She's manipulating you, he said coldly. She wanted our money. Now she'll pay. And in that moment, I realized it had nothing to do with evidence. It was about control. They wanted to humiliate her. And I was the price. I watched them drive off with my wife in the back seat. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. Not just for her, but to every single one of them. The moment Elena disappeared in that squad car, something in me shut off. Not grief. Not panic. Calculation. I didn't chase after the police. I didn't shout or beg. I stood still, stared at my father's smug face, and memorized every detail. The wrinkle near his eye twitching, the way his tie was slightly off-center. He was proud of what he'd done. He thought I'd fold. Instead, I walked away. I drove straight to Elena's best friend, Callie, a corporate defense attorney who'd seen enough family sabotage to write a book. She opened the door and froze when she saw my face. Elena was arrested, I said flatly. My dad orchestrated it. Callie didn't hesitate. Get in. We're going to war. That night we worked nonstop. I gave her every login I had, bank records, email threads, company archives. I knew my father's patterns. I'd watched him silence people for years with intimidation, legal traps, non-disclosure agreements. But I'd also seen him slip, especially when he thought he was untouchable. By morning, Callie had a file. A damning one. Turns out, months before I even proposed to Elena, my father had quietly rerouted client funds into a shadow shell company. And the kicker? He'd used my employee ID to initiate the transfers, then tried to pin the entire digital trail on her, using her laptop's Wi-Fi connection when she visited me at work. I sat back stunned. He planted everything, I said. Callie nodded. They used you. And she's just collateral. I clenched my jaw. Then let's burn their kingdom. Step 1. We filed a counterclaim of malicious prosecution and digital fraud. Step 2. We handed the evidence to someone my father couldn't buy, the FBI. But I didn't stop there. Because before the sun even set, I walked into his office. Quiet. Alone. He looked up, confused. You here to apologize? I dropped a folder on his desk. No, I said. I'm here to let you know the federal investigation is already open. And the last thing I saw before walking out was him finally looking afraid. He didn't open the folder. He just stared at it like it might explode. Federal investigation? He repeated slowly as if tasting the words. That's right, I said, voice calm. Wire fraud. Evidence tampering. False allegations. Obstruction. They've got enough to tear through your entire boardroom. He gave a bitter laugh. You think the feds care about your little vendetta? I leaned in. They care when the financial trail leads through 3 shell companies and the numbers match up to pending federal contracts. His face cracked. He knew which ones. See, my father wasn't just corrupt. He was greedy enough to take shortcuts on federal deals, thinking no one would catch him. But Elena had friends in places he never even thought to check. And now those friends were watching. You ruined your career, he said, grasping for control. You just turned your back on your family. No, I replied, standing tall. You turned your back on my wife. And now you're going to find out what happens when someone you underestimated stops playing nice. I walked out before he could respond. By the end of that week, 3 things happened. Elena was released without charges. FBI cleared her after a single interview. My brother's name appeared on internal emails linked to the fraud. He was suspended by Monday. My mother, once silent, got a subpoena. I didn't stop. I submitted the documents to the press anonymously. The story broke fast. Elite financial consultant family under federal investigation. Son whistleblower sparks inquiry. I expected silence from my father. But instead, I got a dinner invitation. Handwritten. No subject line. Just a note, let's talk. One last time. Dad. I looked at it for a long time. Because I already knew what it really was. A trap. And I was going to walk straight into it. I showed up to the dinner. Not because I trusted him, but because I wanted him to know, face to face, that the version of me he raised was gone. And the man sitting across from him now? He knew how to play his game better than he did. The restaurant was quiet. Private booth. Candlelight and manipulation. He didn't waste time. I'll make this simple, he said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. You drop everything, investigation, press leaks, court filings, and this is yours. One-time payout. We move on. No questions asked. I didn't touch it. Bribery? I said. That's how you handle betrayal? This isn't betrayal, Landon. It's containment. He sipped his wine. Unbothered. Elena was a problem. You were blind. I removed her. I didn't blink. She's my wife. And she's beneath you, he snapped. No legacy. No pedigree. You think love pays for anything? I built this name, your name. And I won't let her drag it through the mud. I leaned forward slowly. That's where you're wrong. Because I'm not carrying your name anymore. His fork froze midair. I filed this morning, I said. Legal name change. I'm taking her last name. We've already signed the papers. He looked like he'd been slapped. You think a name makes you clean? He growled. No, I said. But it separates me from everything you poisoned. I stood. Enjoy your dinner. As I turned to leave, he hissed, if you walk out, you'll regret this. I looked back, dead calm. You had my wife dragged out in handcuffs on our wedding day. And I walked. 2 days later, the feds raided his company. And my mother, who once watched in silence, finally called. Not to check on me, but to say, trembling, they seized the house. And she asked the one question I never thought I'd hear from her lips. Landon, what did you do? I didn't answer her right away. Not because I didn't have one, but because hearing my mother finally ask that question meant something deeper. She finally realized I wasn't bluffing. They seized the house, she repeated, voice shaking. You told them where to look, didn't you? I didn't confirm or deny. I just said, they followed the money. I helped them read the map. Silence. Your brother's suspended. Your father's barred from the financial district. The firm is collapsing, Landon. She sounded like a woman watching her world implode in slow motion. He tried to destroy my wife, I said calmly. And you stood there. I didn't know, she whispered. You watched. Click. I hung up. The next call came 20 minutes later, from a journalist. A source had confirmed the firm's internal documents had been leaked to investigators by a direct family member. They wanted a quote. I gave them one. Family doesn't mean immunity. It means responsibility. That line ended up in headlines. And that's when things started to spiral faster. My father's remaining clients bailed. My brother's private chats leaked, showing clear knowledge of the forged digital trail pinned on Elena. The firm's name was blacklisted from federal contracts. And a quiet class action suit surfaced from former employees, ones my dad fired for non-compliance. They weren't silent anymore. But the moment that truly changed everything? It wasn't legal. It was human. I opened my apartment door late one night to find Elena standing there, her suitcase in one hand, her arrest record paperwork in the other, and tears in her eyes. "I'm cleared," she said. "But I don't know if I can go back to who I was." "You don't have to," I said. "We're not going back. We're building from here." She stepped inside. And as I closed the door behind her, a new letter slid under it. Another subpoena. This one had my mother's name on it. And that's when I realized my revenge hadn't even peaked yet. The subpoena had my mother's full legal name on it. No Mrs. No wife of. Just her, isolated and finally accountable. Elena sat on the edge of the couch, watching me read it. "They're pulling her emails," I said. "She forwarded internal memos to your arresting officer." Elena's breath caught. "So she knew." "Worse," I said, placing the letter down. "She participated." That was the final crack in the myth I'd been raised with. My mother, always too quiet, always just following, had moved from silence to complicity. She didn't just watch Elena get arrested. She helped make it happen. Elena looked down at her hands. They were supposed to be family. I turned to her. They were. Now they're suspects. The next morning, I released the final batch of documents. Untraceable, encrypted, sent through a trusted journalist. It included internal Slack logs, digital voice memos, and a PDF attachment titled Contingency Plan, Post-Arrest Damage Control. My mother's initials were on every page. Within 48 hours, 3 major news networks picked it up. One headline hit harder than the rest. "Wife arrested at wedding. Son of power couple exposes family's targeted smear campaign." The fallout was brutal. Sponsors backed out. Investigators opened a separate line of inquiry into my mother's role in falsifying testimony. My brother's name trended, for the wrong reasons. He lost his board seat the same afternoon. But I didn't celebrate. Not until I walked Elena into the very same courthouse where she'd once been fingerprinted in her wedding dress. And we stood there again, this time to file a restraining order against my family. As we left, she asked quietly, "Do you feel anything for them now?" I paused. "Pity," I said. "But not enough to stop." Back at home, I found a letter shoved under the door. No stamp. No name. Just 5 words in my father's handwriting. "You won. Hope it's worth it." I folded it slowly. Because he still didn't get it. This wasn't about winning. It was about ending every lie they ever built. With the same cold precision they used to tear us apart. I burned the letter that night. Not out of rage, but because I wasn't going to let his words linger in my home like poison. "You won. Hope it's worth it." He thought this was about revenge. But it never was. This was about restoring truth. About honoring the woman he tried to destroy just because he couldn't control her. Elena and I moved into a smaller place. Simple. Quiet. Ours. She went back to work at the clinic part-time. I started building something new from scratch. A small firm focused on ethical finance, free from nepotism and manipulation. No legacy clients. No family name. And yet, the fallout from my family's empire still kept unraveling. A federal trial date was set. My mother was indicted on obstruction charges. My brother fled the state but was forced to return under threat of arrest. And my father? His lawyer tried negotiating a plea deal. But I declined to comment. Let them speak for themselves for once. And then, something unexpected happened. I got a call from a law school. A professor had read the case files, public by then, and wanted to invite me to speak to their ethics class. "You exposed systemic rot from inside your own family," she said. "People need to hear how you did it." I almost said no. But Elena looked at me and said, "Your story helped me survive. Maybe it'll help someone else too." So I went. I stood at the front of that lecture hall and for the first time told it all. Not the scandal. Not the headlines. The silence. The choices. The quiet decisions that built into something irreversible. Afterward, a student approached me and said, "You didn't just break your father's legacy. You built your own." I didn't say much. Just nodded. But inside, I finally felt it. That night, Elena and I sat on the balcony, wine glasses in hand, and watched the city lights blink. "They ruined themselves," she said softly. I smiled. All I did was give them the rope. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. New email. Subject line. Federal prosecutor summary, final verdict released. I opened it and read the one line that closed the chapter forever. The final verdict is in. I stared at the email, heart steady. Elena leaned over my shoulder. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. I opened it. Subject. United States versus Reed et al. Final ruling. All charges sustained. Full conviction. Sentencing to proceed. Permanent disqualification from all federal contracts. Civil liability recommended. Public record will reflect the fraudulent foundation of Reed Financial Group. I closed the laptop. It was done. My father, once the king of backdoor deals and country club power games, was now a convicted felon. My brother? Disgraced, unemployable, and banned from the industry. My mother? Awaiting sentencing for obstruction and evidence tampering. And the firm that bore our last name? Dismantled. Erased from every client directory it once dominated. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't toast or dance or gloat. I sat with Elena, fingers laced through hers, and let the weight leave my body inch by inch. I don't want revenge stories, she said quietly. I nodded. Me neither. But I wanted them to know they couldn't get away with it. They don't, I replied. Not anymore. The next morning I got a call from the courthouse. They wanted me to testify one final time, for the civil case involving former employees. I said yes. Not because I needed to bury them deeper, but because the people they trampled deserved to see someone finally stand up. So I put on my suit. I walked into that courtroom. And I told the truth, not for headlines, not for applause, but for every moment Elena was doubted, silenced, or betrayed. The Reed name was no longer a weapon. It was a warning.